Good evening and welcome. My name is Martin Jones, and this is the London School of Business and Finance. And this is session 1 of SBR revision. And as mentioned in emails to you recently, we are starting tonight with ethics, indeed with question 2, and a particular question 2 that I have in mind. So yes, welcome guys. My name is Martin Jones. This is Strategic Business Reporting, ACCA SBR, and we are looking at a classic question 2 from the December 2018 paper, a question called Fiskerton. And joining me tonight live, we have the usual crew. I will go through my welcomes. So, hey Wellers, hey Phil, hey Luke, hey Locke, hey Gan, hey Tamara, hey Jenny, hey Mwamba, TT Sherna, Shamoa, Arifa, Taya, Marianne, Wajiha, Emmanuel, Ruda, and Abdul. And a big special welcome to Kieran, who is joining us from the campus team. And a big special welcome to Arifa as well, who's joining us from the campus team. And Wajiha is semi-campus, so big welcome to you as well. And welcome to one and all, welcome to everyone. What I'll probably do is I'll probably come back to this panel and just say my further welcomes in a moment. But right at the minute, I want to start work. So we're going to look at exam questions for every single session. Pretty simple timetable that you've seen I've put up into resources. Basically, I do a question of a type, and then I set you that homework of the same type, and then we have a mentoring session where I debrief that question of a type. It has to be said that when it comes to SBR, when it comes to strategic business reporting, all questions are essentially the same. There isn't really an enormous difference between a question 1, a question 2, a question 3, and a question 4. They're basically all the same, but there are subtle differences. And generally speaking, question 2 is the easiest, and that is, of course, why I'm starting that. And just joining us now is Tayano. Lovely to see you there, Tayano. Big thumbs up to you, another campus student. And Georgia, who is also semi-campus. Welcome, welcome to you guys. Should we start? So my plan is to do a couple of things as regards question Fiskerton. One is to answer the question Fiskerton, but another is to introduce you to Pearson and Test Reach. So I think I will do that immediately, if that's okay. I have, in fact, actually got Test Reach open at the moment, and I'm going to reverse back so that you can see what I'm doing. But we're going to do a question from the December 2018 examination. Some of you guys might have navigated to that question using the revision pack, as it's called, and I'll show you that in a second. But that's not where I'm going. Some of you might have navigated to the question by navigating to the ACCA PDF. And again, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that fundamentally, but it's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is to Test Reach. Let me take you there and tell you what I'm doing. So here I go. I'm going to share screen, and as you can see in the background there, I've got my Outlook, just checking everyone's okay, actually just making sure there's no one stuck trying to get in. No, it all seems fine. And you can see there's my Test Reach, and in fact this is also Test Reach, but I'm going to come out of that and I'm going to go to ACCA land, just so that you get the idea. So here in ACCA land, you guys are students, of course, so you navigate to students. You pick up on study support resources, and you come across to ACCA qualification and then over to strategic business reporting. And when you come down, you'll find various resources, all of which we'll be looking at during this revision course, But tonight there's a particular place that I'm going to spend most of my evening, and that is over here in CBE question practice. I'm just going to float on it. You'll see it turn red. I'm just going to go there to CBE question practice. When I hit this button, you'll see that it gives me a choice between Streams, of course, we're doing the international stream, so I hit that, and you'll see it gives me various papers. And these papers are the first 5 published papers. There's in fact been a couple more since then, so there's 7 in all actually. But these 5 probably are the best 5, to be honest with you. The other 2, they're okay, but they're only available in PDF. These links, as you can see, are described as launching an external site. You can see that just below specimen 1, we've got launch an external site. So that is what's going to happen. If you have a look at the top, when I hit the button, there's the ACCA brand. You see there at the top. When I hit this button, which is no December, isn't it? When I hit this button and go across to the December exam, you'll notice how the brand on the top changes. You'll see the brand on the left is ACCA, but we've now navigated to TestReach. Now, TestReach are a small Irish supplier, and the ACCA hired them because they were basically having problems with convincing their big supplier called Pearson to provide them with a test environment, with practice environment. So there's a couple of brands straight off, in fact 3 brands in all. Of course, the qualifying body that you're doing your examination through is the ACCA, of course. But when you go to the examination, fingers crossed you do go to the examination hall and sit in the examination hall and you've got your fingers on the keyboard, what you'll be doing is you'll be submitting your Word document into an environment called Pearson. Now, Pearson are ginormous, much more sizable than the ACCA. And just reading between the lines from what I've heard from the ACCA, the relationship is one of, shall we say, bigger fish and smaller fish. And the ACCA feel a little bit bullied by Pearson. They seem to be happy with Pearson in the examination environment. Pearson are big, and the number of students taking the examination at any one point is huge. And therefore, they quite like having Pearson when it comes to doing the examinations each 3 months. But they don't really like dealing with Pearson for creating this environment, the environment for you and me to meet and practice exam questions. So they reached out to an Irish supplier called TestReach, who are a really small supplier in Dublin, and asked TestReach to create an environment that facsimilates Pearson. So this isn't actually Pearson, but it does closely approximate Pearson. It's very, very close indeed. So we're now in TestReach. And I'm really going to encourage you to play around with TestReach, because it isn't the same as Microsoft Word. Of course, most of your answers will be using Word, but not Microsoft Word. They'll be using Pearson Word, or in this environment, they'll be using TestReach Word. And it is substantially less good. It's you know, trying to be nice about it. The functionality is substantially less, and it's almost like the better you are with Word, the more you suffer. If you are familiar with the F papers, then you've already come across this, especially those of you that are really good with spreadsheets. You really notice the difference between a Microsoft spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and the Pearson spreadsheets. The same kind of experiences is what I experience here as well. So what I'm going to do is, you know, straight off the bat, right at the beginning, I'm going to cock something up and just show you how important it is that you practice in this environment, and how many valuable seconds you could lose in the exam just because you haven't practiced enough in TestReach. So I'm going to really try and sell you TestReach. But of course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a question to illustrate this. So let's go straight to the question. I'm just going to move you guys out of the way. Now, what you're looking at here is what's called the rubric of the examination. As you surely know, you're going to have 15 minutes of reading time, and it's only when you press the yes after the rubric that your examination starts. However, having said that, even though you have 15 minutes of reading time to read the rubric in the exam, don't. It's perfectly reasonable to take those 15 minutes if you want to spend them staring at the ceiling. Make sure that you do read all this guff before the examination, and indeed read it again in December before the examination, so that you know the rules of the game called the rubric. Make sure you do look at the rubric but do it this weekend, you know, do it again the weekend before the examination. Don't be doing it in the examination room. That's very stressful. But there's lots of it, and when I hit the next button, you'll see what I mean. If if you have done an ACCA exam on the computer before, you'll know there's lots of this guff. So I'm flicking through more by luck than judgment. The typeface is quite small, making it easy for me to do this. Even this requires a little bit of scrolling, and you'll see there we go. And there we go, there's the yes. So of course there isn't a timer in this particular platform. This is TestReach and not Pearson, but in the real exam, when you press that yes, that's when your 3 hours and 15 minutes starts. So I'm going to start my fake 3 hours and 50 minutes, off I go, and there we go. It's telling me, you know, there's a section A with 2 questions and 50 marks each. Of course, I knew that. So I'm just going to hit the next button there, and you'll see there is question 1. Actually, you can't actually see that it's question 1, can you? Because it's just just behind you guys there. It's just over here. This is confirmation. It's question 1, and of course, this question 1 is a groups question, and we are indeed looking at this on this particular question on the revision course, but not today. Groups questions, they're all essentially the same as ethics questions, which is essentially the same as the accounting questions in the back. There isn't much difference between any question, but there are slight differences. And as I say, question 2s tend to be the easiest, and probably it's question 2 that you'll be starting with when you do the exam in December. So that's what we'll do here. We'll hit the next button and we'll come over, as you can see, to question 2. It's very small, little 2 over there, but you can just see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing now and just make sure everyone's cool, check everyone's ready to go, look for the thumbs. So welcome to Shmaz and Wamba. Thumbs if you're ready to go. Lovely, me too, all ready to go. So let's take a look at this question and see how it looks on TestReach. So I'm just going to take you guys and park you over there. As you can see, there's a very, very brief introduction to what is available, what information is available, and most of the content is on the left under the headings exhibits and requirements, and finally response options. The vast majority of questions provide only a word processor and don't provide you with a spreadsheet, but the vast majority of questions are in fact based upon narrative, as you know, and therefore you would only need a word processor. But even if you have a spreadsheet available, the actual explanation and all the discussion would go into the word processor, and you don't really need the spreadsheets unless you've got that thing that we've mentioned yesterday evening, the cash flow statement. That would be the only time that you would ever really use a spreadsheet. And even then, if you prefer Word, some people prefer to do their cash flow statement in Word, please feel free to do so. Word is always okay, and generally speaking, spreadsheets not. Well, you can't go wrong here because there is only a word processor. So if I hit that button there, this is the space in which I'm going to answer my question. Now, as you can see, it looks like a small space, but what happens is it automatically expands as I work my way down. You can see I can move it around, but it's pretty clunky to do, and you're probably not feeling how clunky this is because it's me that's doing it rather than you that's doing it. So this is why I do want you to go into this world and feel the discomfort that I'm feeling now navigating in this world. Well, clearly that's just the answer. What we really need is the requirements. So I hit the requirements and up they pop over here. And we're going to do all the requirements, of course we are. We've got A, discuss, B, discuss, and C, explain. So you can see that we're going to be going points, points, points throughout. It's going to be points. I'll just mention this nice and upfront, nice and early. Professional marks have no special meaning in SBR. They really are just for exactly what the examiner suggests, which is for the quality of the discussion. It's all about, you know, being nice and clear, talking a good story, putting down points that are relevant, that are in front of you. They don't even have to be right for you to get both the marks. Classic style that we use all the time is the one that the markers are expecting. And if you are clear, not too clever, you answer the question directly, you'll get 2 out of 2. Now, this is particularly important for those students that happen to be doing SBL, because in SBL, there's a whole litany of different features that your answer must possess in order to get the professional marks. It's quite a thing, professional marks in SBR. It just isn't like that here in SBR. I will always score the 2 professional marks simply by being clear, straight to the point, and delivering in points. So that's the professional marks knocked on the head. Next, we'll look at the content of the requirements. It's discuss how the Hallam property should have been accounted for. So you can see that quite clearly this is accounting. No surprise, it's an accounting exam. Discuss in accordance with IFRS. You can see that this is going to be financial reporting as well. No surprise there. But this is a question too, and therefore the back end is ethical issues. And we're required to make 7 ethical points in response to the scenario. And as usual, we're going to use the mnemonic ICCO. So that's professionalism, integrity, competence, confidentiality, and objectivity. And as you can see from those 5 fingers there are only 5 headings that are immediately available to us for the ethical issues. That sounds like a problem because we're looking for 7 marks. But actually, this question, like all questions, had marks both for the issues and also for the actions that you could take. It was a real bit of a cock-up by the examiner, but looking down at this here, you can see that this just says ethical issues. Explaining ethical issues which may arise from the imagined act and accounting from each of the scenarios. Naughty, naughty examiner. What he meant was exactly what he said in every other exam, which is describe the ethical issues and the actions that you would take. In every other question, he's got that right, and this one he cocked it up. Not very nice for the students who were doing this. But in every one that he's done since then, he's made sure he's been right, and everyone before this, he's made sure he's been right. Now, it's 7 marks, and you can split it how you like, but most students do tend to go for 4 ethical points, 4 ethical marks, and 3 action marks. As we discussed yesterday, the first thing we do is the scumbag idiot test and discover that the scumbag is a scumbag. That'll be our first mark in part C. And our final mark in part C will be saying, I'm working for a scumbag, don't like it, I'm going to leave. And that's 2 marks already, even before we've read the scenario. And therefore, it suggests that because we can answer part C immediately, that maybe we should answer part C immediately. I have real mixed feelings about this. I don't want to be too dictatorial about this because some students, they really feel that that really does work for them. But I feel it really doesn't work for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the scumbag a scumbag and the idiot an idiot. But I'm going to say that because he keeps making mistakes. Some of them are deliberate and some of them are accidental. He keeps making mistakes in his accounting. He keeps making errors. Until I've personally nailed the accounting errors, I don't feel like I can nail him for his errors. I feel very uncomfortable doing part C first when doing these ethical questions, so I won't. Now, in some ways, that's a little unfortunate because every other question you would answer just naturally in any order. So if we popped up a question 3 and we quite fancy part 3 of question 3, you know, an A, B, C, and we wanted to do 3C first, we just would. We would do, you know, C, A, B would be no problem at all for question 3. So the fact that I'm answering this in order is a little, there's a potential for me giving you the idea that you always answer in order, but it's not like that at all. Many questions, they do naturally flow in order, but if you start with A and you find you're fine and then go to B and you stutter, we'll just go to C and come back to B. It's completely okay. And you just answer the question in order. You don't need to rearrange the question so it goes A, B, C. You can just leave it in the order A, C, B. It's completely fine. Lots of students do. It's totally fine. You don't need to reorder the question so that it's in order. But this particular one does flow naturally in order, and that's why I'm going to answer it in order. So what we're asked to do at the top is discuss how the Hallam property should have been accounted for and explain the implications for the financial statements and the debt covenant of Fiskerton Co. So let's go and have a little look at that. I'm just going to make sure you're still cool because I do realize this is a first session. My mouse has just gone to sleep, just wake it up. There it goes. So yeah, okay, good stuff. Again, still all good? Lovely. Let's go and do it then. Which means having a look at the introduction, which is very, very small, and then having a look at the exhibits. Fiskerton Co. is a public company which has a year end of the 30th of September. The following exhibits available on the left-hand side of the screen provide information relevant to the question. We've got financial statement extracts, which are for the year ended this year. We've got something about a Hallam property, which describes a property leased by Fiskerton to Edingley, and we've got a sales contract, and this exhibit provides details of a sales contract for the construction of an asset by Fiskerton. This information should be used to answer the question requirements within the response option provided. So the response option is just no option at all. It's the word processor. It's the button I've just closed. We've just had the requirements open already, so it's time to go to the financial statement extracts. It's time to go to what's often referred to as the background. So the background, as you can see, pretty tiddly, not too much going on in there. That's the full thing. The following is an extract from the statement of financial position of Fiskerton, a public limited company, as at the year end. And there is a very brief balance sheet, not added down, as you can see. The bank loan has a covenant attached whereby it will become immediately repayable should the gearing ratio of Fiskerton exceed 50%. Fiskerton has a negative cash balance as at the year end. So we've got something indicating that there are problems with the debt covenant, and also we've got a negative balance. So we've already got indications that Fiskerton is struggling a little bit, is at least struggling a little bit, which makes us instantly think of going concern as a possible heading that we'll be using in our answer somewhere. But what else might come to mind is this reference to the gearing ratio. Whatever you do, don't pick up your calculator. As soon as you pick up your calculator, you are scoring 0 marks per minute. You do your very best to leave the calculator on the desk all the time and never, ever, ever pick it up. You sort of, oh, I suppose I have to pick it up now, when you find yourself in a question where you really do have to pick it up. There's no indication we have to pick it up here. So leave it parked there, wait until you absolutely have to. You know, when you've got to calculate the goodwill in a goodwill schedule. Yeah, okay, so then, all right, you've got to add down then. This one here, you've not seen anything that indicates that you have to pick up the calculator. Don't. Try and keep it on your desk as much as you can. Because, you know, the more you pick up the calculator, the more you fail. So we've had a look at the introduction. It describes a business that's struggling a little bit. And then we'll go into the Hallam property. We kind of know what we're going to read in the first line. We're going to read in the first line something about leasing. Included within the non-current assets of Fiskerton is a property in Hallam, which has been leased to Edingley Co. under a 40-year lease. The property was acquired for 20 million on the 1st of October and was immediately leased to Edingley, or is it no, it's Edingley, isn't it? So it was acquired for 20 million on the 1st of October 2007. No. What is our year end? Just a second, I've just forgotten what our year end is. 30th of September 2008. So it's very much towards the start of the year. It's a bit of a funny date. It was the 30th, wasn't it? Not the 1st. Oh, it's the 1st. Sorry, that's my eyes. It was the 1st. So it's the first day. It was the 1st. So it's the 1st of the examiner's favourite day for everything happening. So it's the 1st day of the current year when this transaction takes place. Just have a little read of it again. What happens is the non-current asset, the property, bounces into our portfolio and then immediately goes out to the customer. So it comes in from our supplier and then we supply our customer within a short period. We don't know exactly how long that would take, but maybe we get it in the morning and we transfer it to our customer in the afternoon. But really what I'm getting to is this word here. We've got the word leased. You can see that there is leasing going on. So what is the most important thing that you need to think about in the context of leasing? Open up your mic and tell me, what is the number one thing you've got to think about in the context of leasing?
Is it if you're the leaser or the leasee?
Yeah, that's it, D. It's who you are. If you don't think who you are about to talk rubbish. So the two people are the lessee and the lessor, or, you know, more simply, they're the guy who owns the asset and the guy who's using the asset. So let's go back and have a little look and see if we can figure out who we are in this context. So back we go. Included with the non-current assets, Fiskerton is a property in Hamlet which has been leased to Eddingley under a 40-year lease. So the 40-year lease is between us and Eddingley, and we are the legal owner and they're the user. Therefore, we are the
lessor.
We're the lessor. Brilliant. And therefore, we're going to describe lessor accounting. Now, I have to say, I have so many things to say to you tonight. As soon as something pops in my head, I'm going to say it to you straight away. So I'm going to go, hang on, lessor accounting. Oh no, I've forgotten lessor accounting. I remember lessee accounting. That's the one with right of use and all that rubbish, discounting and unwinding. Yeah, I can remember that. What the heck is lessor accounting? So I'm just having this momentary experience where I can't remember how to do a basic bit of financial reporting. So where do I go in my revision space, which is where we are at the moment? I need to cheat. I need to get myself going. Where do I go to get myself going? Tell me that. I need to cheat. Where do I go? You go to the cheat sheet. Exactly right. If you need to cheat, you go to the cheat sheet. And don't be frightened of using the cheat sheet for the first 2-3 weeks. You know, you'll need to wean yourself off this fella as you get closer to the examination, but just at the moment, it's fine to use the cheat sheet. So let's go and find the cheat sheet. So the cheat sheet is over in your world. And it's not going to be terribly easy for me to navigate to this. I'm going to have to move that out of the way. There we go. I'll just check the email again, make sure no one's stuck. No, everyone's there. There's your question, Wellers. Thank you very much for that. And as you can see, I have dashboard open there. So I'm just going to move that back. Lovely. Enter our world. And then come down here to tuition. So where are we? To revision. There we go. And if we go across to resources, you'll see all manner of guff that I've slotted in there, including, for example, the online study planner that we'll be looking at in a second. But at the moment, I want the cheat sheet. It's the IFRS notes. Now, I could actually hit that button and open that right here in front of you, but of course, I've got it on my stick just here on the left-hand side. So I think that's probably the cleanest way of me dealing with that. So I'm going to open up the cheat sheet and show you that baby now. So here we go into revision down here, over to PDFs, and there is the baby, and it'll pop up in Adobe in just a second. Here it comes. And just going back up to the top, here we go. There it is. It's the IFRS notes. Of course, it's not really called the cheat sheet. How would that work? And what it is notes, the key notes on all the basics of all the standards. It doesn't contain all the knowledge, but it contains the vast majority of the knowledge that you'll find yourself really using in the examination, including how to account for leases. Now, as mentioned yesterday, there is one problem with this cheat sheet, and that is it's in standard number order. Now, because it's in standard number order, it does kind of reinforce the importance of standard numbers, which is an incorrect message. As mentioned yesterday, if you were with me yesterday, you'll have heard the story that you don't need to know standard numbers. There is no marks for knowing that leases is under IFRS 16. No marks at all for that. But on the other hand, if you do know it's under IFRS 16, you'll know that you need to go right to the back of the sheet. What we really need to do is to go and grab the table at the back of the sheet. So let's go and grab the table at the back of the sheet. Let's go and cheat. Right, we go all the way down to page 11. That's right, there's only 10 pages and a cover page. And we will open this up and you'll see what we see when I open it up. There we go. So lease accounting, there's lessee accounting and lessor accounting. Currently, there are two forms, and there's the table. And all we have to do is pick that table up and drop it down into our answer. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. Now, before I go any further, I'm just going to say this. What I'm going to do, just to show you me struggling in test reach, the facsimile of Pearson, just so you can see me struggling. I am going to struggle in test reach. Now, as I answer in test reach, it'll create a document that I am unable to save. And therefore, the document, once I finish tonight, will disappear into the ether. So the answer that I produce in front of you, I won't be able to say that it won't be available to you. But on the other hand, you do have answers to all the questions already. Now that takes me back to this fella here, resources. If you take a look at resources, it says that you have all the answers already. So in fact, you have all the answers to all the recent examinations, of which there are 7. There's a specimen paper, another specimen paper, and a further 5 examinations that have been examined. And these are my answers to Graham Holt's questions. That's how it is. These are my answers to Graham Holt's questions. And in there is my answer to question Fiskerton. Of course it is. Of course it's there. So it's not like you actually have to get the document I produced tonight because you've already got the answer there. But I think it's important to see me struggle and cock things up. So off I go. I'm going to make a cock up of this. You watch me. You watch me cock this up. Again, and it's the first evening for some of you guys, so I'm just going to look for the thumbs again. Are you ready to see me cock this up? Off I go. I'm going to cock this up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to whack down my knowledge point. Good boy, Martin. So off I go. Here I go. Off I go. Just going to move this out the way. There we go. Over to test reach and then move this thing back. There we go. I'm going to pop up the word processor and off I go. Now, can you see what I'm trying to do here? What I'm trying to do is make this bigger. I've never succeeded. I just thought I'd try tonight, you know, just in case. It's awkward, right? I was just trying to make that shape bigger. You know, my eyes are 52 years old. They're struggling a little bit. I could do with that being bigger. Tough. So this is part of the experience of going into this word processor and struggling. So off I go. Here we go. We're going to go lessor accounting. So lessor accounting. So I'm still going heading center centers. I don't tend to bother with bold and all that stuff when I'm in here. You can see it's a heading. So the lessor, sorry, that's not what I wanted to say. I want to put the name of the entity. Fiskerton is the lessor and therefore would use this model. Did that work? There we go. And then I'm going to do my favorite thing, which is I'm going to insert a table. Of course I am. I love tables, as you all know. So here I go. It does look kind of a bit like Word, doesn't it? It's a bit small and a bit more ugly, but it's basically like Word. Well, that's not quite what I meant. There we go. And there you go. My favorite thing, a table. So it's all about where risks, and has that got an I in it? Yes, risks and rewards sit. And when risks, the two people are the, I'll go for this, the lessor and the lessee. So 2 S's, gosh, that really is small. And the name of the accounting, the name of the lease is an operating lease and a finance lease. And the accounting that comes out of it is when you have operating lease, you recognize operating income, hence its name. And when you have a finance lease, you recognize the sale and a receivable. The receivable, of course, is the finance. So you recognize a sale and receivable. And then, of course, what you want to do is you want to do your next line. So you click down here. Oh, I can't click down there. That's okay. I know what to do. I can press this. All right, but I can't do that. And oh, so what do I do? How do I get down here? I know what I'll do. Excuse me, my mouse has just got frustrated as well. Is your battery running low? Can't blame ACCA for my battery running low. What the heck's going on there? And now your battery is running low as well. All right, that's easily solved. The mouse battery, not so easily solved. You're really running low. Just let me turn it off and turn it on again. if I warm it up and it starts working, we definitely know it's the batteries, right? Oops. It's gone cold today, hasn't it? If I can now. Oh yes, the battery, isn't it? Look, I just warmed it up and now it's working. All right, let's see if it survives till the break. If not, I'll have to change that battery. So to really struggle there is a bit unfortunate because the rest of it I was faking, wasn't I? So let's try and pick this up, you know, and copy it. So I'm going to copy that and try and stick it down. I can't. You don't know what I'm going through because I'm going through it here all on my own. You really do need to get in there and see how impossible this is. I've tried and I've tried and I've tried. I cannot figure it out. There doesn't seem to be any way to solve this situation that I've created here. Next, I could try, maybe I could highlight it. Yeah, and maybe I could cut this like that. You can try that. Oops, there. Why is it not cutting? It's not cutting now. Okay, try again. Yeah. So there we go. I'm going to cut this. Oh, it's even different now. It's even more different. This is not exactly what it was doing last time. So now I'm even struggling to cut the damn thing. Wow, that's really weird. And basically, this is the end of my answer. And I've just failed my exam because I'm struggling with Pearson. It's just not like Word. You just can't just, it's the strangest thing, but once you put in a table, you can't get below the table. Of course, I knew that this was coming up. That's why I did this deliberate cock up right in front of you. I wanted to cock this up in front of you just to show how unbelievably frustrating it is. You have a go at this, and if you do figure some sort of way of getting this sorted, then please do email me. But there is a relatively easy way of sorting it. I'll just back button until I've got rid of it, and I'll show you how you do it. What you do is when you start is you just go, and then you sort it. So it's not like it's difficult to solve the problem. Now it doesn't matter if I drop in a table, I'll be able to drop down to the paragraph below and I'll never have any trouble. But imagine if that happened to you for the first time, you know, at 10:15 on Thursday the 10th. Imagine that happened to you in the examination. You were like struggling with the functionality of Pearson. It'd be a killer, wouldn't it? It'd be just the worst 5 minutes of your entire life. And I think it would affect the whole hour, 3 hours and 15 minutes. So I really, really do recommend you have a play around it here. Don't just use Word. Clearly, you're going to have to use Word to submit to me. I accept that. But while you're, trying out these questions and submitting them to me, go across to Pearson and try and whack them into test reach and have a little practice in test reach and see what pain in the ass it is. So now I've got this sorted, I am actually sorted. It isn't actually that difficult to solve the problem. You can see this is a problem that I have figured out and sorted out in the past. So what are you going to do now? You're going to do it now. Okay, so let's try it again. So there is a solution to this. It's not like it's impossible. And now look, I can carry on just below. See how I can carry on just down there with my next heading. So it's fine. I am now fine, but I've had to get rid of the table and put it back in again in order to solve the problem. So really recommend test reach to you. So I'll start again, risks and rewards. And there's two players, which is the lessor and the lessee. And the different kinds of lease are called, which round have I got it? So lessor is operating. And the other one is called finance. And the accounting that we're doing is operating income and sales and receivable. So which is it that applies here? So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and we'll go back to the scenario and we'll figure out how to get our second mark in the examination. Just going to stop sharing for a second. I think I'll pop up the chat if I can. There we go. I'll have a play with that. Thanks, Kieran. Yeah, I've had to try it dragging. Dragging didn't seem to work. Yeah, okay, I'll have a play with that, Kieran. Where's my phone? My wife has got my phone. No, she hasn't. She did some shopping on Amazon. So she wanted my phone. I'll take a photo of that, Kieran, and try your advice to see if it does work for me. But not now. That's the point, you see. The point is you need to get in there and have a little play around to see how the functionality is awkward and get used to it. Give me a thumbs if you're all ready to look at the scenario and figure out which kind of lease it is. Okay, let's go and have a little look at the rest of the scenario. So you'll remember that the way that we distinguish between the two different kinds of leases is we look at the number of years. So maybe I'll do a couple of examples with my mouth before we get into the example here. So say, for example, that the life of the warehouse is 20 years. And of those 20 years, you transfer 1 to the counterparty. If you transfer 1 to the counterparty, you've kept 19. That means the score is 19-1. So I have the substantially all the life after I've signed the contract, and I had all of the life before I've signed the contract. Therefore, me as a lessor have gone from owning the asset to owning the asset. Therefore, I haven't sold the asset. Therefore, this is an operating lease. On the other hand, if this is a 20-year warehouse and I transfer 20 years to the counterparty, then they've got 20 and I've got 0. They've now got 20, I've got 0. So this asset is now substantially theirs. Before we signed the contract, it was mine. So the asset has gone from being mine to being theirs. And when it goes from being mine to being theirs, that's called a sale. So I'll record a sale. The one where you record a sale, you also record a receivable, and the receivable is a form of finance. Therefore, that second one is called finance lease accounting. So let's have a look at the story and see if we can work out which one it is. You can bet it's the opposite of the one that the examiner's done. You know, that's already a good hint. Included within the non-current assets of Fiskerton is a property in Hallam, which has been leased to Eddingley under a 40-year lease. So it's a 40-year lease. So now we need to know what the underlying life is. Is the underlying life 40 years or is it 400 years? That's what we're looking at. The property was acquired for 20 million on this date and was immediately leased to Eddingley. Well, that's not the information we need. What we need is another number of years. The asset was expected to have a useful life of 40 years at the date of acquisition and have minimum residual value. So the asset has got 40 years. We bought all 40 years from our supplier in the morning, and then in the afternoon of the year start, we transferred all 40 years to Eddingley. So is this a finance lease or an operating lease? Over to you guys. It's a finance lease. Brilliant. Well done, Emmanuel. Lovely. It's a finance lease. Well done, Marianne. Excellent.
Martin, let's say, for example, there was a 10-year lease. So 5 years it went to the lessee and then it came back to the lessor after the 5 years. Is it still, who's the risk and rewards going back to? Is it still the lessor because they end up having it at the end? So it's an equal split.
What you've hit on there is an example of where the IFRS falls apart even worse. We already know that the IFRS is very stupid, but don't know if you heard what Emmanuel said. Emmanuel said, what if you have 10 years and it's 5 each? That's never been examined because the IFRS just doesn't work at all. We already know that the IFRS is stupid because when you have do you remember it's the operating lease that's stupid? When you do operating lease accounting, you ignore the receivable you do have. So we already know that the IFRS on leases, called IFRS 16, is stupid as regards lessor accounting. It's not only stupid, but it also doesn't work. The examiner does look at the fact that it understates the lessor's receivables when they have an operating lease. He does look at that, but he's never in all his years, the 25 years of being an accounting examiner, he's never done 10 years 5 and 5. So if he wanted to do it, he'd have done it by now. So if on 10 years, he'll either transfer 10 or he'll transfer 1 and keep 9. On 50 years, he'll either transfer 50 or he'll transfer 2 and keep 48. And there are good commercial reasons why he examines it like that. In fact, actually, in real life, they do tend to fall into one or other camp. because of the commercial features that you can probably think through yourself. Does that answer the question,
Yeah.
Emmanuel? Yeah, cool. Great. Let's keep going, Shamaz, if you don't mind. So off we go. We decided this is a finance lease, so we've got evidence this is a finance lease. Let's get that down. Oops. So I need to pop up my word processor. There it is, and I've got my heading here. Fantastic. So the conclusion is finance lease. Did I spell that right? No, I did not. I got a C in there. It is finance lease. Goodness me. Finance lease. I don't even know if that says that. That is very, very small for my eyes. Fortunately, it can't be marked wrong for spelling errors. The entire asset life is transferred to Eddingly, and so this is a finance lease. So the lessor, Fiskerton, must report a sale of the property at the year start and a corresponding receivable. Wait a second. Hang on. Just a second, guys. Let's have a look. Included in the non-current assets of Fiskerton is a property. Ah, they want to sell the asset and keep it. They want to have their cake and keep it. Of course, what they're doing is operating lease accounting, and this is a finance lease. Well, we knew that already. Whatever the examiner's done, the opposite is true. But you can see that there is a property included. And another point that I want to say is when you sell something, you do need to de-recognize it. So the actual Hallam property has got to go. This means that the Hallam property must be de-recognized at the year start. At the year start. How's that? There we go. And back into the story, if you'll allow me. So back into the story. Included within the non-current assets of Fiskerton is a property in Hallam which has been leased to Eddingly under a 40-year lease. The property was acquired at the year start for 20 million and was immediately leased to Eddingly. And of course, they should have de-recognized in the sale at the start of the year, but they still have it on the balance sheet. Apparently at 20, but when we read on, actually it's not 20. Let's keep going. The asset was expected to have a useful life of 40 years at the date of acquisition and minimal residual value. That's evidence that we've transferred substantially all the risks and rewards to the counterparty and therefore should record a sale and a corresponding receivable. Fiskerton has classified the building as an investment property, which is kind of reasonable apart from the fact the property shouldn't be on the balance sheet at all. Now, you can definitely talk about investment property accounting if you want to, but there's actually so much going on in this scenario. That's one of the things that I'm just going to pick to the side and keep going. And has adopted a fair value model. The property was initially revalued to 22 million on the 31st of March 2008. It's difficult to pick up on the dates here, but our date, our year end, is in fact the 30th of September 2008. And this is the halfway point known as the interim point. And these are the interim FS that are being described. Interim financial statements had included interim financial statements had included that gearing was 51% prior to revaluation. So what it's telling us is that they're really close to the 50% threshold beyond which the loan covenant is breached. And in fact, actually, the only reason that they didn't breach at the halfway point was because, wait a second, they lied about their investment property gain. They put through an investment property gain. That investment property gain went to the P&L, ended up in retained earnings. It made equity grow. When you make equity grow, you make your gearing go down. It's quite subtle, isn't it? But what's happened is a bit of creative accounting has allowed the equity to go up, the bottom of the gearing ratio to go up, and therefore the gearing to go down. So we're nowhere around about the 50% area in terms of the story without picking up our calculator. But that 2 million has to go. Well, I suppose the interim FS are gone. We're not going to talk about them. Let's keep going and find out what's going on as regards the year end. The managing director was made aware of this breach, and the managing director was made aware of this breach of covenant, and so instructed that the property should be revalued. Exactly. So it's a creative counter right. The property is now carried at a value of 28 million, which was determined by the sale of a much more prosperous, sorry, have I missed something? Determined by the sale of a similar sized property on the 30th of September. This property was located in a much more prosperous area and built with a higher grade of material. Gosh, there's so much information coming at me now. The main thing I just want to point out to you is 28 million is a lot more than 20 million. Therefore, the gain that has gone into equity is 8 million. And that is still keeping this entity below the 50% covenant. Not only do they need to de-recognize the property at the year start, they need to de-recognize the investment property gains as well. All those fake gains, they need to come out of the P&L, and therefore the equity will go down. So that's what I'm going to say next. This means that the Hallam property must be de-recognized at the year start. And this also means that the investment property gains must come out of the P&L, abbreviation's fine, and retained earnings, abbreviation's fine. Wait a second, hang on. If we pull the gain out of the P&L report and out of the retained earnings, the gearing will go up. If the gearing goes up, then we'll be honest about the fact that we really are in breach of the covenant. If we're in breach of the covenant, what was going on over there in that exhibit? Wait a second, the bank loan is here. The bank loan's in non-current liabilities. Hang on, wait a second. If we are in breach of the covenant, then the loan is immediately repayable. Hang on. If the loan is immediately repayable, it's not a non-current liability, it's a current liability. So next I'll get my little bit of knowledge about presentation and how things move from one to another when you breach a covenant. So over we go over here. I need to pull this back out. There we go. Move it across maybe. So here we go with, say, the heading of, presentation or current liabilities. Non-current liabilities, in fact, actually. Non-current liabilities, because that's where it is now. And NCL is a present obligation with the right to defer payment beyond 12 months. It is a present obligation, but we've got the right to stick two fingers up at anyone who demands their money. Well, we did have that right until we breached the covenant. It does appear that the covenant has been breached, and therefore this liability needs to move out of non-current liabilities into current liabilities. An NCL is a present obligation with the right to defer payment beyond 12 months. Fiskerton have lost this right because the removal of the investment property gain will cause a breach of the 50% gearing covenant. So the loan should move to CL. Now take a look at that and see that you're absolutely damn right. I haven't fully explained that. For goodness sake, don't try and fully explain that. That's already too many words. Don't try and add more, because you've got this really lovely thing in your back pocket. You're just dying to play it, aren't you? And it's pretty easy as well. So get it down, you know, don't be frightened of this. Going concern, let's have it. So going concern, let's do the knowledge first. Any uncertainty regarding the ability of the company to continue as a going concern must be disclosed. Any uncertainty regarding the ability of the entity to continue as a going concern must be disclosed full stop. The breach of the covenant therefore must be disclosed to shareholders. And of course, if I wanted to, I could get the overdraft in there as well. But this is the thing, you've got to be really careful to try and keep things short and not say everything. Because we've got this lovely thing coming in. You know, if you'd say too much on one thing, you can't say anything on the next. And we want to get as many different ideas in there as we can. The examiner loves fair value. He sticks in almost every single exam. We've seen it right at the beginning of our exam. How fantastic is that? So let's get in there and see if we've been fooled or if it really is there. So here's my exhibit. I'll just bring it across, try not to turn it purple. Can I unpurple it? Oh no, it's gone purple now. Can I unpurple it? You little devil. Oh, it's permanently purple. Never mind, I'll have to cope. So, oh my days, how can I read that? Can I just close it and open it again? That's doing my eyes in. Please don't be purple. Oh no, it's purple for life. Right, okay. So where are we now? 28 million was determined the sale of a similar sized property on the 30th September. This property was located in a much more prosperous area and built with a higher grade of materials. It's a cock-up on the fair value measurement, as you can see. An independent professional value was estimated the value to be no more than 22 million. The managing directors argued that fair values should be referenced to an active market and was refusing to adjust the financial statements, even though he knows this is contrary to IFRS. There's reference to fair value, value, fair value, value, fair value, fair value, and value over and over again. It's almost like, how many times does the examiner have to say fair value before you give up and you give him the 2 points? So let's give up and give him the 2 points. FVM uses a hierarchy, and then we whack it out as fast as we possibly can. Level 1 is exact equivalent active market price. Level 2 is approximately equivalent transaction price, and level 3 is unobservable inputs into financial models. And you can see there's more evidence of this thing. I've just got a button. I was half asleep when I was typing that. I was concentrating more on my fingers than the words. There's a button on the back of my head that says FVM. I press the button, out comes the words bleh, like that. And that's exactly what you want. You don't want any, you know, how does this button work? The button's got stuck and then can't get the word. You want to be instantly, you know, here is the definition of control. Control is the power to direct activities. There's the button, bleh, and then it just drops on the page. Got to have instant access to your knowledge so that you can have a little look at your level 2 and have a little think about it. Now, I don't know how you interpret this, but the way that I interpret this is they are doing level 2, but they're cocking it up. they've taken an approximately equivalent transaction price, but then they haven't adjusted for it. They're taking level 2 and then copying the price. Another way of doing it is they're not taking enough of a level 2 approximately, it's not close enough equivalent. Whatever way you argue, they've definitely cocked up the FVM. Fiskerton is the name of the entity. Fiskerton has incorrectly used level 2. A better equivalent building transaction should be used in valuation. Now, I think I'll probably say this out loud because you guys are probably pretty sharp to this. And that is, well, we don't really need to be doing any FVM at all because we sold the building and it's off our balance sheet. And it's like, you are right, but you're also doing an exam. And you've got to bear in mind that the examiner wrote this question while he was watching Match of the Day. The examiner never pays any great attention to what's really going on. He just slaps down a whole load of rubbish into his answer and hopes for the best. So, you know, he has said value, 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 value over and over again. It's like I say, how many times does he have to say value before we put value into our answer? And honestly, before I actually saw Graham's answer this, I knew that FVM would be in there. And I answered this using FVM before I saw Graham's answer. Then I saw Graham's answer, and sure enough, Graham had put FVM in there. I do realize it's a bit daft because we're not going to do any FVM because we're going to de-recognize the asset at the year start. We're not going to have it in the year. But anyway, you put value in, you know you're going to get a mark, at least probably 2. So that was why I approached that in the way that I did. Guys, back to you. What do you think? Thoughts, questions?
I'm a bit lost, to be honest.
Talk to me. Which bit you're struggling with?
Just the whole flow of it all, like how you know what's coming next and what's coming next. And
so, of course, I'm cheating because I've done the question before. But there's a couple of different ways of answering these questions, and any way that works for you will work in the examination. But one way that works really well is you read a bit, you write a bit, you read a bit, you write a bit, you read a bit, you write a bit. It can work quite well if you try and read the whole scenario and get a whole feel for it. But the problem with that is you often get even more overwhelmed because there's too much information. So if we go right up to the top in our mind's eye without immediately going to the page, you remember that right at the top it said leasing, and you, Dee, actually were the one that figured out that we were the lessor. There is no danger as to that ever being wrong. So you just go lessor accounting, we do this, and then you just try and figure out which lease it is. And then you read the next thing and you deal with it. It's not the easiest scenarios, but I don't know. They take a little bit of practice, it has to be said. But I don't know quite what to say to that.
Yeah, sorry, but you know, like you know, like with the FD making that decision and stuff, I would have gone off on tangent and started talking about integrity and stuff.
There you go. So you'd have failed the exam. So it's exactly what we were talking about yesterday. You keep your ethics in your ethics, and you keep your accounting. You don't mix them up. So we are, of course, going to talk about it's the MD actually in this case. There's another point actually. Do you want to do the idiot scumbag test? So let's do the idiot scumbag test for part C. So the idiot scumbag test is not the easiest to do now because I've managed to highlight this, but oh goodness me, it's got rid of the highlighting. Great, I can even maybe highlight it back again. Even though the he is the MD, knows this is contrary to IFRS. So is he an idiot or is he a scumbag? D.
He's a scumbag?
He's a scumbag.
Okay.
Good. He's a scumbag. But he's not the FD. He's the MD. And he's trying to do the FS. So what else is he?
He's an idiot as well?
He's an idiot, exactly. There you go. So he is the classic. He's an idiot scumbag. And there's 2 marks for idiot scumbag. Why am I not putting idiot scumbag at the start of my part A?
Oh, because then we'll say that we want to leave or something. And we do
No,
that
no,
again.
no.
No, I don't
With
know.
requirements. Can you see it now, Dee?
Oh, because it's ethical, so that's section C.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Okay.
So you park those points. There's no problem in thinking them as you go through. I normally do actually, but I can't. I don't know. I was so focused on the accounting, I almost like had a grey patch when I was doing the ethics. I sort of saw it, but I didn't really see it. I was so focused on the FVM, I must admit, was what really dragged me in at the bottom of the scenario. I was like looking at the FVM and thinking, whoa, that's really dodgy. And the examiner loves it. It's just exactly like I was saying when we did the FVM a couple of weeks ago. It is exactly like I was saying, isn't it? He always does the same thing. He does FVM, he cocks it up, and then he says discuss. He doesn't actually tell you it's FVM is in the scenario. You have to figure that out for yourself. It doesn't come with a signpost saying, this is FVM. He just goes, fair value, value, fair value, fair value, value. And you go, right, okay, there's the word fair value. I'll copy it and write underneath it and figure out what the cock up is. Well, the way I read it is he's done level 2, but he's cocked it up. What he's done is he knows that he should be taking an approximately equivalent transaction price, but he's taken a transaction price in a much more prosperous, much bigger property that's not equivalent. And what we need to do is to take a transaction price of a local property that's nearer. So he's doing level 2, but he's cocking it up. Different ways of interpreting it, but that's the basic idea on the FVM. When it comes to the lessor accounting, he does seem to have figured out that he's doing, sometimes you never know what's going to happen. So this is lessor accounting. Sometimes the cock up he'll do lessee accounting instead of doing lessor accounting. Anyway, he's got that bit right. So he's doing lessor accounting. The lessor accounting he should be doing is finance lease accounting. Therefore, he's done operating lease accounting. He just cocked up the lessor accounting. And what else was there in there? Oh, yes, he's got the loan in the wrong place. He's in the breach of the covenant. He's got the loan in the NCL. Therefore, it should be in CL. Whatever he's done, the opposite is always true. And what else was going on? Going concern, the business is struggling. It hasn't disclosed it. Disclose it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Martin. Okay.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. If we argue the criteria for investment properties and whether it fulfills or not, would it be 0 mark? No, I think it would be 1 mark, but it's a bit like the FVM. It's like, investment, I don't see this being any problem whatsoever in talking about investment properties, but the problem is it's a bit like the FVM point, which is why I did it at the end. The trouble with talking about investment properties is we're not failing or passing the criteria as regards investment properties at the year end, because there isn't a property on the balance sheet at the year end anyway, because we sold it at the year start. So that's why I didn't go into investment properties. The other, I suppose, maybe that's not the reason. That's maybe the reason is the examiner said investment property once, and he said fair value 5 times. Maybe that was what made me go, all right, I give up, I'll do fair value. Yeah, that probably was the reason why I chose that point, because he kept on going on and on about the fair value being cocked up. Perhaps that was the reason I chose that one, Shumaz. You ready for a break, guys?
A quick question, Martin.
Yes, fire away, Wallace.
When you listed level 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
What about if I don't use like the fancy word unobservable inputs? Like if I say by using an appropriate financial model.
No, level 3 doesn't use an inappropriate financial model. Is that what you said? Inappropriate?
No, inappropriate.
Inappropriate. Using a financial model. Yes, you could say that.
No.
But I think, to be frank with you, I would say I would learn that exactly as I wrote it. If I were you, would be my real recommendation, because that little phrase unobservable. What will happen is if you put unobservable inputs, they won't read the rest of it. Level 3's got this thing unobservable. You could probably say unobservable canary, donkey, elephant, and you would score the mark, because all they'll see is the word unobservable and give you the tick. So it is the word unobservable that attaches itself to level 3. So it is particularly that word that's helpful. Is that all right?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. See you in 5 minutes. Hey guys, welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, Martin. Yeah, we're back.
Hey.
Good.
Yeah, are you okay, Dee? You feeling a little better?
I got my results this morning. I was positive.
You're positive?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
That's why I sound like I'm dying, because I've got such a high temperature.
Yeah, well, it's not going to help you analysing Graham Holt.
Oh my God, I know.
I know,
I'm going to
yeah.
do what I can. If I go quiet, that just means I've either gone for a lie down or I'm just, I don't understand anything.
Yeah. Well, just let it open your ears
Yeah.
and let the messages wash over your brain
Okay.
like go a trance dance.
Oh no, thanks for being so understanding, Martin. Thanks.
Very
for
welcome.
as
You're
well.
very
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah.
I'll just watch these recordings and hopefully try and understand a little bit more, like kind of get the layout of the answer.
I think the real issue, Dee, is I don't think you've submitted plastic.
Oh,
Do you know plastic? What do you think, Phil? Plastic. This is kind of plastic, right? What do you think? What do you think, Phil? Did this question really reminds me of plastic? I realise the subject matter is completely different, but you can tell it's the same author, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have got the lesser accounting, and some of the other stuff, but some of the things that you said, I wouldn't have that wouldn't have come to mind during the question. So I think it's important just to get, have the knowledge at the back of your mind. So that
It's important to have the knowledge, but once you've got the knowledge, it is important to. I do feel it is a little bit like crosswords. It's strange that I compare with crosswords because I don't actually do crosswords, but I have had a go once or twice, and when I did have a go once or twice, I found that I, traveled the bottom of a very steep curve where I was learning lots every time I did it. And I think that is it. Every time that you do a Graham Holt question, you get twice as good at Graham Holt. He has a very strange way of expressing himself, and I think, really honestly, I think if you're getting into this question, I think plastic is the one to open the door to this question. What do you think, Locke? I do feel like it's a little bit like plastic, lots and lots going on. You're just pulling out the keywords, writing some knowledge, and then applying it to the scenario. What do you reckon?
But I think maybe a way to figure out behaving sentence or figure out why is the issue needs to be write down.
What was that? Sorry, I'm just going to turn this right. Oh, it is fully up.
Yes.
Come just closer to your mic.
It's like plastic, but
it is like plastic. Yes.
Yeah. But I think a little bit difficult to me to figure out the issues and put it out. What is the setting?
Honestly, guys, I think really Shamaz came up with investment properties just by reading the words investment properties straight from the scenario, and it would undoubtedly get a mark, unquestionably get a mark. So maybe we'll just go back in again and make sure that you can see the words. So do bear in mind that sometimes let's just go through a few little things, so you get the idea that sometimes it is a little harder. So sometimes revenue will be hidden behind the word sales, and then you need to think sales equals revenue. That's a little harder. Sometimes impairment will be hidden behind the word abandonment, and that was the one that we saw in question plastic. But that's not generally the case. Generally, there's an impairment because the examiner uses the word impairment. And that there's revenue because the examiner uses the word revenue. And that there's fair value because the examiner uses fair value. And that there's lease because the examiner uses the word lease. And I think at the moment you're still not allowing yourself just to see the word lease and go, it's leases, because it really is there. So we'll make sure we'll go back in and we'll just make sure you've got this idea, because it really is here. Now look at this. My wife has just come down to try and help me out with this. It just shows how rubbish I am in Pearson. She's managed to find a little button on the right hand side here. She's made it so big, I don't even know if I can make it smaller, but somewhere around there, there's a little button now. How do I make it small screen? But as you can see, I've made it full screen now. I close that up and then pop it back out again. I can't even figure out what on earth she did. I really do find this a difficulty. It was down here, the little button, but I think she was struggling to get it out of full screen. But you can see how much easier this is to read. It's so much easier to read, isn't it? So I'll show you the little button on another exhibit, so you can see. So I'm using the X over here. So what I can do is just see this little button just here. That's the button I was looking for. I was looking for the button over here. There's no little button on the edge and no little button on the edge, but there is a tiny little button just there. Do you see it, guys? My wife just found it. Look at that. But I think once it's gone full screen, that's it. You can't take it out of full screen, and it's stuck in full screen, which is not such a bad thing, you know. So once I do this, that's now full screen. I can't get it out of full screen, I think is the way it works. Yeah, I can't get it back out. So that's now is full screen. So it seems to be, but this is what I keep saying about, you know, make sure that you do play around in here, because it is so different to natural environments that you're used to, especially if you're used to a Mac machine, you're going to find this unbelievably horrible. But even if you're used to Microsoft world, you're still going to find it pretty shocking. But that wasn't exactly what I wanted to show you. What I wanted to show you was the issues over here in the Hallam property. So, you know, it's like, I'm just going to minimize you guys for a second and just show you that it's like, you know, it's just right there. There's leasing. You just copy the word leased right out of the scenario. And then where are we? Where were we? Sorry, the non-current liability is in the other thing, but I'll show you that in a second. I feel a bit weird actually not having you here, so I'm going to get you back again. I feel like I'm talking to myself. That's very weird. Got you back again. Right, so where was the thing on fair value? So fair value, there's the word fair value. How many issues did we do? So we did fair value, we did leases, we did going concern, and we did non-current liabilities. So let's go and get the non-current liabilities. The non-current liabilities was actually in the original financial statements. The bank loan was under non-current liabilities. It's kind of like, well, if you know, it is very much like this. If the bank loan is under non-current liabilities, then it's in the wrong place. And then we picked up going concern right at the beginning because it's got a negative cash balance. So that was how I picked up the issues in the scenario. And just to, you know, reinforce the message that we had earlier, which is it's perfectly acceptable to do investment properties. There is the phrase investment properties. So Shamaz didn't do any rocket science there. He just read the word investment property, thought I'll copy that and write under it. And it is correct. It is right. It's just there's so much going on in there. You can even talk about events after the reporting period. There's tons and tons of stuff that is going on here that you could talk about. You could talk about interim financial statements. There's tons and tons of stuff that you can talk about in the scenario. You just can't talk about it all. So the particular 7 points that I made were just the ones that are kind of my favorites. I think really, to be honest with you, they're kind of my favorites because they are the 7 points that I put down first time I answered this question when I first got it from Graham. I tend to get the exam just a few hours after you, and then I answer the question before I get Graham's answers, and that really helps me to, you know, decide what I think is right before I see Graham's answers. So that's how my relationship with this question evolved. But speaking about Graham, let's go and have a look at his article. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. Are you all good to come with me and have a look at what Graham really thinks about his exam? Would you come with me? So I'm going to come away from this question for a second, and we're going to go to ACCA land. Give me a thumbs up if you're all ready to go back to ACCA land. Now remember, we're not in ACCA land over here. Thank you guys for all your thumbs, much appreciated. So when we come over here, we feel like we're in ACCA, but we're actually in test reach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new page and go across to ACCA land and over to students, down to study support resources, down to ACCA qualification, then over to strategic business reporting. I'm just going to move this out the way. And then over here, right to the bottom, Now this thing, technical articles, can you see that? That's the current issues. That's what we're going to be spending the middle week on. So that's in our future, doing the technical articles. But now we're going to look at CBE exam technique. They're in fact exactly the same as the articles under paper technique, so there's no difference. The technique is completely the same. When you click under this, what you do is you find various articles, all of which reinforce the same message. So there's advice on revising, you know, as in practice, lots of questions, advice on revising, as do some more questions. But what we want is really this one here. There's, as you can see, there's quite a few articles here. Only one of these articles has actually been written by your examiner, and that's this one called Recommended Approach to the B section, to section B of the SBR examination. Now, that really is a misnomer, because under there, what Graham does is Graham tells you how he thinks he should answer the whole exam. So all the other articles, they're all written by other people other than Graham. They are good articles, but they're written by other people, different authors. This is the only one that's actually written by Graham. I like the two above as well, by the way, because these really are written by real markers. And when you get into those, you'll see that, you know, all of the students, they use real, this second one here actually uses real student submissions, and this one uses facsimilated real student submissions. And you'll see just how basically all students are going heading sentence, sentence, heading sentence, sentence. It's kind of taken as a given. And you'll see that when you get into that. But these are good for, they kind of teach you how unfair marking is, because there's enormous inconsistency in what they do in one question, what they do in another. They're really good, those two. So they as a pair come in at number 2, but definitely a distant number 2. It's kind of, you know, Liverpool, Manchester City, to be honest with you, because this one is so far ahead, because this one's written by Graham. Now, if I hit this button here, what you'll find is, of course, what pops up is a HTML document. And because it's HTML, it's difficult for me to highlight. So what I've done is I've popped in your resources, a copy of this article. And where is it? Recommended Approach to the SBR exam. I've edited the name slightly to say what it really says. And if you pop on that button there, you'll find that you get the article with the appropriate highlighting. So I'm going to open that now, and I'm going to show it to you. Now you can imagine this is not the first time I've shown students this article. So I'm pretty familiar as to how's probably the best way to present Graham's ideas. It seems to be from the back. So I'm not going to get you to read this whole article, not right now, that would be inappropriate. But what I will do is get you to look at features. So you can see who has this language of knowledge and application. It does come straight from Graham. So what he's saying in this back section is you're expected to have the knowledge, but then you must apply it. And don't just apply stuff you feel, you have to base it on the knowledge. He's talking about the fact that you need both, and both are an integral part of SBR. Give me the thumbs if you're okay with that. So the rules on knowledge and application come from Graham. Give me a thumbs on that. You good with that, Phil? Good with that, Locke? Lovely, that's great. So going on to the next point. Now, funny enough, the next point is on points. Graham takes it so much for granted that you're all doing points, as in heading sentence, sentence, heading sentence, sentence, that he doesn't really talk much about points. In this particular thing, he talks about something to do with points, which I will tell you. But let's just basically pick up on the word points and realize this word points comes from Graham. Graham is the originator of this word. So he's talking about the fact that when you've got an 8 marker, you make 8 valid points. That's his language, that's the way he describes it. So that's why we do what we do, because that's what the examiner says. You make, if you've got 8 marks, you make 8 valid points to gain 8 marks. That's what he's saying. So that is how SBR works. That is how P2 worked before that. And dare I say it, that was how, all those years ago, 3.6 used to work before that. And then what was it before it was 3.6? It was something else. ACR. There you go. That's how long I've been doing this rubbish. And me and Graham, we go back a long way. And it's the same idea consistently throughout Graham's history as an examiner. You whack down your points. Points mean prizes. You whack down your points, you get your marks. But actually, I'll tell you what he's talking about here. It's something that'll help you, Shamaz, actually, because you came up with the idea of investment properties, and you can see how positive I was to it, even though I didn't put it down in my answer. What he does here is he picks a particular question and he says, look, you know, all you need to do is make 8 valid points, but let me show you 16, he says, and there are others as well. So actually in this paragraph, his point is that there's always loads and loads of different points. Don't think you need to make all the points to score all the marks. You don't need to make, you know, don't need to reference everything in the scenario to score all the marks. You just need a smattering of this, that, and the other. You know, don't just do one thing either, but you don't have to do everything to score full marks. That's actually what he's saying in this paragraph. So points being prizes, give me the thumbs for that. Next, there's something that I feel uncomfortable about, but I've told you I have authority from the examiner to do this thing, and that is the idea that the best approach is to set out the principle and then in the next sentence to apply the scenario. Now, as you know, my favorite way of doing CACA is I whack down the knowledge and separately put down another point for the application. And I'll almost always do that. And that is the standard way of going through your CACA. Here is the knowledge. Here is the separate point for the application. There they go as a pair there, 2 marks. And that was the strategy that I used with fair value measurements. So if you'll allow me to come across to test reach, if I can just get hold of test reach, is that it there? If you allow me to come across to test reach and just X that fellow there, bring up my answer, you'll see that there is the F. Sorry, it's not quite fit. Maybe I can do that thing that my wife was just showing me. Thank you very much, Luann Jones. There is my knowledge mark there. There's the fair value knowledge mark there. And there is my application there. That is 1 point. That is another point. This is 1 mark. That's another mark. That's the standard way of answering. And you'll do that most of the time. But for me, I thought that there was so much going on that I thought I'd do the NCL point and the going concern point really quickly. And that is why I did what I did with the going concern in particular. The going concern is a pretty simple idea. If a business is in trouble, it needs to disclose it. That's the knowledge. And then this business is in trouble, therefore it needs to disclose it. That's the application. So I think asking for 2 marks there is a little bit cheeky. So I just asked for 1. And of course I will get 1. But you can see I do have authority for this, you know, doing 1 sentence of knowledge and then immediately doing 1 sentence doing, that didn't quite work. Doing 1 sentence of application thereafter. The authority comes from the examiner himself. Here's that article again. The best approach, he was saying in particular case, not always, but in this particular case, he says, I give you authority to set out the principle, the knowledge, and then immediately apply it to the scenario. You can do that sometimes if you want to, says Graham. But I think the most interesting thing, the most shocking thing is this thing here, what the examiner says at the beginning of this article. Give me a thumbs if you're ready to be shocked. Give me a thumbs. Yeah, okay, here we go. Read this story. This is what the examiner says about his examination. Expect questions like this. The reason I use the word expect is this article was written in the summer of 2018, immediately before the first examination in September 2018. So he's saying this is what to expect in SBR. This kind of thing is what to expect in SBR. This is what to expect in SBR. This. So let's find out what this says. Med Supply sells technology needed to perform highly complex operations. When a hospital purchases equipment from Med Supply, it provides a specialized piece of instrumentation. Presumably that's Med Supply provides the specialized piece of instrumentation. Not crystal clear, but not too bad, which is an integral part of the surgical process, free of charge. Yes, you did read that. This business, Med Supplies, is somehow in business providing its product for free. So what it does is it sells its product for nothing. And as far as I'm concerned, the most important part of this sentence is free of charge. It provides its product free of charge. Nowhere in the scenario answer Does the examiner mention free of charge? He ignores it almost as if it wasn't there. This question makes no sense. I want you to understand the examiner published in 2018, I am going to write questions that make no sense. That's what he told you in 2018. Just listen to him again. He is saying, I am going to write rubbish questions. Get used to it. That's what he's saying to you. I'm going to slap down any old rubbish while I'm watching Match of the Day. Don't expect my questions to make sense. So guys, don't go complaining in December when your questions don't make sense. As Billie Eilish would say, duh. You're doing SBR. Obviously, you know, what I want you to do is I want you to go, oh, this one does make sense. That's the one you should be shocked about. You know, actually, we've been quite critical of this scenario as regards the Hallam property, but I think it's actually not too badly written, to be honest with you. When you look at the next one, you'll see how insane it is. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing for a second and just see if Graham was true to his word and really did examine questions that don't make sense. Give me a thumbs if you're all ready to look at part B. You ready to look at part B? Lovely, all right, me too. So is it true? Is the examiner capable of writing questions that make no sense? Let's share the screen and wander all the way back to test reach. So here we go, this is my answer. And over here is the sales contract. Now we're probably going to need to look at the requirement first. So here comes the requirement. Presumably I can do a bit of this. Yeah, there we go. So explain any ethical issues which may arise. Oh, sorry, part B, my apologies. Discuss in accordance with International Financial Reporting Standard 15, contracts, revenue from contracts with customers. Discuss whether the revenue should be recognized on a stage basis. Okay, so I can't make that. It's just being truncated there. Oh, I see. All right. So I'm going to do that, bring it in, and then try making it bigger. Yeah, okay, that's just about perfect. Can you see the 4 marks over here? So there's 4 marks over there. So we're gonna make 4 points. Now, just remind yourself what happened in the first scenario. What happened in the first scenario was there's lease accounting. 2 different forms of lessor accounting, finance lease accounting and operating lease accounting. He did operating lease accounting, therefore it was finance lease accounting. Then what happened? Then there was the FVM, he cocked that up. And then what else was there? There was the going concern, which hadn't been disclosed. And then there was the non-current liability, which should be in current liabilities. Whatever the examiner does, the opposite is true. And that is the only trick that we have hold of from part A that we can actually use in part B. Let me show you. So over we go to part B. Over we go to part B. Now, I'm going to be a little bit cheeky in the way that I answer this, and I think that will help you. So I'll just move you guys out the way. Here we go. Fiskerton Co. has entered into a sales contract for the construction of an asset with a customer, whereby the customer pays an initial deposit. The deposit is refundable only if Fiskerton fails to complete the construction of the asset. The remainder is payable on delivery of the asset. If the customer defaults on the contract prior to completion, Fiskerton has the right to retain the deposit. The managing director believes that as completion of the asset is performed over time, revenue should be recognized accordingly. He has persuaded the accountant to include the deposits and a percentage of the remaining balance for construction work in revenue to date. Now be careful, D. You can see that there is some workplace bullying there. Yes, well done, D. That is there. You are seeing it. It is ripe and ready for your part C. Park it now and come back to the accounting. Did you notice the word? I am cheating here. I know exactly what to look for. I'm looking for either the word at or the word over, whichever one he gives, it's the opposite. So Phil is nodding his head. That's very impressive. Where are we now? I'm sure I saw over. Over. There we go.
Yeah,
it's there over. You've got it as well. Well done. Brilliant. So if it's over, it must be at. I know what the subject is. It's now cast. Let's get it down. So I'm going to answer the question in a very natural way, but I'm going to perhaps answer it a little bit of a bullying way myself. I'm going to bully you to the answer. So here I go. If I can just get the X to minimize it. There it is. And get my answer up. Get my word processor up. Here we go. So that's, yes, it's just one word processor. So I'm now going to do B. So what am I doing here? I'm doing the sales. So sales is revenue. So I'm going to start with this, revenue. Revenue is recognized either at the point that control transfers or over the period of performance. The distinction depends upon the source. It depends upon nowcast is what it depends upon. It just moved me out the way. Oh, I can see that's gone off the line. Okay, so just need to make that a bit smaller. There we go, just make it a bit smaller. Make it smaller again. You're going to come back to me. There we go. So I'm just going to grab this and make it a bit smaller right over here and then make it bigger again. Because apparently that's how the law works. Okay, so that's how it works. Awkward, like I said, and I think you'll find it awkward as well. Depends on the source, not the sources. Right, so let's have a look at sources. Nowcast, in other words. So sources. Oh, bold. Okay, cool. Revenue is recognized over the period if it is from one of these sources. So revenue with new alternative use or revenue on a custom controlled asset, on a customer controlled asset, or revenue with simultaneous supply and consumption. Nice done. Right. So, right, revenue with no alternative use. That's a bespoke asset. So it'd have to be a bespoke asset. Revenue or custom controlled asset. That's, you know, when we're working on the thing. Like, for example, we're working on the railway and cleaning it up, as happened in Baby. Revenue with simultaneity. You know, that's the phone network where the phone supplier supplies me with a phone line with data and I consume it instantly. Right, so it's very obvious in order to do nowcast, you need to know what the asset is, what's going on. You need to know what's going on in the revenue. And that's fine because obviously the examiner is going to tell us. He wouldn't forget to do that. Of course he wouldn't. So let's go across and have a look at the sales contract, which obviously is going to tell us what the asset is. Has to, doesn't it? Otherwise we can't do nowcast. Fiskerton has entered into a sales contract for the construction of an asset. Yes, but what asset? With the customer, whereby the customer pays the initial deposit. Fine, that's just the cash flow. It's not about the asset. The deposit is refundable only if Fiskerton fails to complete the construction of the asset. Yes, but what asset? The remainder is payable on delivery of the asset. Yes, but what asset? Who cares about the cash flow? IFRS 15 is not based on the cash flow. It's based on the asset. We need to know the asset. If the customer defaults on the contract prior to completion, Fiskerton has the right to retain the deposit. That's still the cash flow. The managing director believes that as completion of the asset, what asset is performed over time, revenue should be recognized accordingly. He has persuaded the accountant to include the deposits and a percentage of the remaining balance for the construction of work in the revenues today. What is the asset, guys? We have no idea. Is it a movie? Is it a guitar? Is it an iPad? What the heck is this asset? Examiner didn't say. This is a rubbish question. What did the examiner say he was going to do to you when he wrote that article? And he had that company, Med Supplies. He had a company that was supplying their customers free of charge and somehow didn't go bust. How does that work? How does this work? This question makes no sense. Honestly, guys, don't think it is there and you're not seeing it. It isn't there. It really isn't there. The examiner says, I want you to do nowcast, but I'm not going to tell you what kind of asset it is. And this is even more daft because don't think he doesn't regularly examine nowcast. The question baby is his question. And in baby, you really paint a picture in your head because we're talking about the maintenance of the railway. Do you remember that? Every time I do that question, I always imagine working at night for some reason. I just imagine the engineers working at night with floodlighting. In my head, I have all this floodlighting and I can see people improving, and yellow jackets. I've got this picture in my head when I read the question baby. That is Graham's question. As is, this is Graham's question. He really did forget to say what the asset is. But on the other hand, he did say over, therefore it must be at. And that's the only way you can answer it. And you've just got to get over this, if you'll forgive the pun. You can't just sit there going, I don't know what to do. It doesn't say what the asset is. You've got to say, right, it says over, it must be out. Thanks very much, done. So I will. So what if I go to answer this question? If I can get my Word documents, I have to close a few documents in order to do that. Here we go. So here's my word processor. Popping up, there we go. So asset. Let's be honest, the scenario does not say what the asset is, but it appears that the above criteria, the above sources do not apply. Can you see what I've said? I've said it appears the above sources do not apply. It does not appear that the above sources do not apply. I am lying. I'm saying something that isn't true because I've already decided that the examiners decided that this must be recognized at. So I'm saying something I don't believe. It's just not true. It's not true that I know it's got no alternative use because I mean, if it's a guitar, if it's a bespoke guitar, then it can't be sold to anyone else. But if it's a standard guitar, then it could be, you need to picture a guitar. If it's a guitar, you need to know what's going on with the guitar. Customer controlled asset, you need to be able to picture the asset like the railway. You need to know what the asset is. It's a computer. Whatever. Honestly, the question really doesn't say, and we really don't know, and you really do have to get over it because that's SBR. You just got to slap down rubbish as fast as you can. But it appears the above does not apply. Therefore, the revenue should be recognized at the point that control transfers. And now perhaps you'll understand why the examiner made such ridiculous error. It's because he's not concentrated on the flipping asset. The thing he's concentrated on is the timing of control. He's forgotten that the asset, he hasn't told you what the asset is. But if you come back over here, you'll see that he has made it very clear that we haven't yet handed over the asset. Where are we now? Fiskerton, if Fiskerton fails to complete the construction of the asset, we can tell that the construction of the asset is not complete, and therefore it hasn't been handed over yet, and therefore control has not transferred. If control has not transferred on an at revenue, then we don't recognize any revenue at all, and therefore all the revenue needs to come out. So back I go to my word processor. Conclusion's a good heading. Conclusion. However, the asset has not been transferred. Therefore, the entire revenue related to the asset should be stripped. Oops, I'm going underneath my little box there, stripped from the P and L. And as I say, abbreviations are fine. There we go. The formula that I used here, as you can see in terms of knowledge and application, is I did knowledge, knowledge, application, application. So I'm still doing knowledge and application, but revenue is a bit more substantial. And therefore I felt it was a nice way of balancing the marks. So we did 2 knowledge marks to set the scene. And then I came to my application down there, and that's how I did the 4 marks. It isn't the only way of doing it, but that is what I did do. As I say, when I first answered this question, I still think it's a good way of answering it now. So we're now going to get into part C, but before I do so, I'll stop sharing and see if there are any questions. So, yes, Shamas, you can ask a question, far away.
So if something is being sold for free, is it technically not donation? Like, as in, it's not even
Yeah,
revenue?
okay, yeah. If you're sold for free, then it's not a sale at all. It's a gift. Yeah, the examiner, no, that's the thing. If I can just go back to this article, the examiner did put those words in, and he did ignore them in his answer. His question, it's almost like, but I mean, more to the point, if you sell your product for free, how do you stop yourself from going bust?
Yeah, technically. Yep.
It's like, the question makes no sense. So please do read that. That's called the med supply scenario. Please do read that med supply scenario parked in the examiner's article as telling you I'm going to write questions, and I continue to write questions that don't make sense. And I don't know just how ready you are for that just now at this stage. But I tell you what, once you've done 5 evenings of questions that don't make any sense, you'll be like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't make any sense, but there's the word leasing. I'll talk about leasing. There's the balance sheet date with events taking place on either side. So I'll do events after the reporting period. Oh, okay, there's the word provision. Here's spot the route. And you just stop worrying about the fact that it doesn't make sense because you've gotten used to it. But it is a bit of a shock to the system. In the context of the med supplies thing, he really did write that article. That is Graham's words. He did describe a business that makes product and it sells them for free. And it's like, how does that work? And in this one, he's applying nowcast, but he completely forgot to say what the asset is because he was more focused in, he'd already decided it was at, and he was more interested in making it clear that we hadn't transferred control yet. It's like, you know, it's just rubbish, isn't it? It's just really, really poor.
Yeah. So in essence, we just need to be relatively familiar with the trickery here.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, but also quite tough as well. You know, you don't just go and get fazed by scenarios that don't make sense. You just go, it's just another Graham Hall question. Who cares? You know, like this matters anyway. All I want to do is just pass the exam and earn more money. And I find a really useful strategy is the more crazy the examiner is, the more you hate him. Hate is a very powerful emotion, and I would suggest you build up lots of it. Seething, bubbling, agonizing hate that spews onto the page in your examination. And no matter how bad you're feeling, D, you're dragging yourself into the exam. You feel like washed up scum. But I tell you what, you hate the examiner more than you hate COVID. And I'm just going to, and I don't care if I'm going to crawl out of this exam hall. I'm going to spew as much rubbish as I can at you useless examiner, scum. And you just build up all this hatred. And it's a wonderful emotion that's very appropriate in SBR. So go for it, guys. You know, hate the examiner. You should. Hey, but part C is quite nice. Should we do part C together? All right, here we go. So off we go to part C.
Thanks for that, Martin. That made me laugh.
You're very welcome. How should we do part C? Shall I carry on typing, or am I driving you nuts with my rubbish typing? Would you want to do? Do you want me to carry on typing?
No,
or?
go for it. Yes,
Go for it. Go for my rubbish typing. You can all have a good laugh at my hopeless typing. So here I go. Back to the story here. I'm going to whack down part C. Now, the great thing is that we do have kind of a formula here. We know we're going to do PICO. But we also know that we're going to start with the scumbag idiot test, and then we're going to end with the I'm going to leave action. We're going to have 3 actions, including I'm going to leave, and we're going to have 4 of PICO. we've already, it's almost always the case that the scumbag's primarily a scumbag, but he's also an idiot. So we've got 2 of those marks already. Let's get them down and see how it develops. So here we go. We're going to go for the scumbag idiot test, which is differentiating between integrity and competence. And we're going to, it's good to use the headings of PICO as well. So we'll start with integrity. There we go. Remember, we present our evidence first. So we quote from the scenario, paraphrase from the scenario. The MD wishes to continue with the accounting errors, even though he knows this is contrary to IFRS, with a spelling error that no one's going to notice. So that's the evidence. Thus, the MD has questionable integrity. Done. That's a mark. It's lovely, isn't it? But I'm going to go for he's an idiot as well. Generally, they are idiot scumbags. So competence. However, the MD is an MD and not an FD. And it is possible he has no accounting qualification. Frankly, sounds like he's quite good at financial reporting to me, but he might not be. Thus, the MD has questionable competence. And while I think about it, because he's got questionable competence, perhaps our first action is to, maybe our first action is to try and persuade him to change the FS. Maybe our second action is to recommend to the audit committee that they hire an FD. Maybe that would solve the problems. And then our final action is to resign because we hate working for the scumbag. Anyway, back to this. So we have workplace bullying, didn't we? Workplace bullying is generally parked under P for professionalism. Oops, not control print. I didn't mean to do that. Shift print was what I meant to do. Shift P. Right, guys. Shift P. There we go. In fact, Control B, Shift P. That's what I meant, wasn't it? Professionalism. The MD appears to be bullying the accountant into FR that the accountant does not think is correct. I forget the exact phrases now, but it was in the sales bit in particular. I was focused on at and over at the time, but if we went back to that, I'm sure we'll see something to that effect. Thus, the MD also appears to have questionable, what are we on now? Professionalism. Professionalism. Do you know what I feel like doing? I feel like doing objectivity. Objectivity is usually a great one. I think in this one's particularly good. Objectivity. Because, do you know what? I think the reason he's trying to do this is because he's trying to save the company. The reason he's lying and being like a scumbag is not really because he's, I don't know, he might be just fundamentally a scumbag, but he may not be. It might be that what he's trying to do is trying to save the company. He's manipulating the financial statements to keep the gearing low, to keep the lenders at bay, to avoid a covenant breach, to avoid the company going bust. That might be the reason why he's doing the whole thing. The creative accounting appears to be motivated by the desire to keep gearing below 50%. This may be true. It may be true that what he's trying to do is save the company, but he's still lying. And that shows that his objectivity, what he's trying to do is what you should be when you're communicating is truthful to the true and fair view. And you should have only a focus on the true and fair view. But if you have a conflict of interest, as it's called, and you're more concerned about saving the company, which is not unreasonable, but it's still not allowed, then you have a split of interests. You do want to tell the true and fair view, but you also want to keep the company alive, and therefore you don't tell the true and fair view. You've got a conflict of interest, your objectivity has been undermined, and yeah, you can see what the result is. It's the creative accounting. So I'm fed up with thus, so I'm going to go for so. So it further appears that the MD objectivity in FR has been compromised, just to try and use some slightly different words. So there's 4 points in issues, and then I'm going to go for action 1, action 2, action 3. So, oops, I quite like using this boldness thing. So action 1, really do, put action 1 and then the action. What was I going to do? Persuade, 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 persuade. Do you remember this thing about role play? What we're always asked to do is imagine that when the newly hired accountant, you can see in this one, he didn't do a very good job with the role play, did he? But the role you're always playing is the newly hired accountant. The sort of mention of accountants, an accountant in the scenario, isn't there? But the role play is not perfect. Let's go for it anyway. We know what Graham's thinking about. We know what he's got in his head. He's got in his head. He has made it clear that our role is the usual, which is the newly hired accountant. The accountant should consider trying to persuade the MD to remove the errors. It is possible that the MD really does not know that the accounting is wrong. It's possible. It says that he does know it's wrong, but maybe he doesn't. It's not very likely though, is it there? So let's try action 2. Try and get an FD. Maybe that's what we need. That's the cure. Get an FD between us and him. If that fails, the accountant might consider contacting the what are they called? I went for the audit committee, didn't I? That's a nice one. Audit committee to get them to get Fiskerton to hire an FD. Maybe if this happens, all the problems will disappear. There's a nice fantasy. Not likely, I would have thought, but maybe. And of course, the last one is resign. Action 3, job. However, oops. I was going for Control B there, wasn't I? It didn't come out. However, it appears Fiskerton is a poisonous environment. So maybe the accountant should look for another job. And before I open back up to, there's a really, really, really important word that you try and use as much as you can. I suggest, possibly, and maybe. It really is a bit of a problem if you start to say, do this, do that, do this, do that. I've mentioned this before in the context of other answers, but it's particularly true here. I mean, you don't know the accountant's position. Maybe we're in the middle of COVID and his wife has just had triplets, in which case he's going to just suck it up and go to work and do what his boss says and just suffer for a year until the triplets are a little older and stronger. His wife can go back to work and COVID is over. You know, don't say, so he must resign. It's like, it's so dogmatic. It is possible you might actually score 0 for that. It's so dogmatic because it's just not good advice. It's not recommendation. The idea that he should consider resigning is great advice. The idea that he definitely should. How do you know if he should? Maybe he's not a he, maybe she's a she, and maybe she's a, you know, a single parent with triplets. You know, you just don't know. So maybe this, maybe that, I suggest this, I suggest that. You've seen me doing it an awful lot in the accounting, my responses in the application in the accounting, but it particularly applies in the ethics. Great, so there you go, that's my 20 out of 20. Let's have a little look at your story, see where you are. Let's have a little look. When are we proposing, when we are proposing journals, our language seems to be direct, whereas in ethics, it's more suggestive. Generally, that's the case. It is difficult to avoid a little bit of dogma when you're going fast. And I try my best to try and avoid dogma, but you might have seen sometimes, you know, do this journal, do that journal. I try my best to say, I suggest this is appropriate and this is the journal that should be recorded. But sometimes you might find me being a little bit dogmatic. If I'm a little bit dogmatic, then it's not perfect. I really should pull back off and always try and get this. I suggest this, I suggest this. I believe that this is the solution. It does sometimes overload the language, however, and sometimes you might see me cutting corners. But really, all of the time, we should be making recommendations rather than wagging our finger. Good stuff. Any questions, guys? Part C is lovely, isn't it? I don't know what to say to you guys. I really feel very strongly that once you get a groove in the accounting, you are going to do A, you are going to do B, you're not going to skip it, you are going to do it. So just do it first and then do C would be my advice. I have to say, if you feel really strongly that you want to do this C, B, A, you do have to do what you think is right for you. So all I'm doing is saying what I think is right for me, and then you have to, you know, just use your own strategy. For goodness sake, please do develop your own strategy and don't take what I'm saying as dogma. I'm not being dogma, I'm just dogmatic. I am just suggesting that I think this question in particular, I find it so uncomfortable to answer it and call the idiot an idiot when I don't even know the accounting myself. Just feels so uncomfortable. But I do like to do the accounting before I do part C. But I do accept that part C is really quick and really easy, and you might feel more comfortable doing it first. The problem is that I tend to find when I look at answers when they've done part C first, is their answers tend to look generic. They're not really answering the question about Fiskerton. They're just whacking down a load of formula that they've learned. Now, this answer that I've whacked down here is fairly formulaic, but it's definitely Fiskerton that I'm talking about. I'm using words like Fiskerton and MD, and you can tell that I'm talking in my ethics definitely about Fiskerton rather than about ethics in general. And I think that students, when they start with part C, they tend to be answering in general rather than specifically tuned to the scenario in front of them. That's the problem I tend to find that happens. But you do have to do what you think is right. So that addresses the thing about the order of questions. In any other question, 1, 3, and 4, you answer in any order. This one, I feel like do the ethics at the end. But you do have to stick at 1.8 minutes per mark. Now, obviously, we ran over enormously there, but we had a look at Graham's articles and everything in the middle. And we've done so many things as we've been doing this. But when you practice this question over the weekend, and I do recommend you practice this question over the weekend, set a, say you've got an hour to do it. Don't do it once over an hour. Do it twice over an hour. Don't give yourself 36 minutes. Just give yourself half an hour. See how far you get. Then stop after half an hour and do another half an hour trying to get further. Because the one thing that you can guarantee you will get to do in the examination is the start of the examination. The one thing you won't get to do is the end. So don't practice the end of the examination. You're not going to get to do the nit-nit. You're just going to get to do the basics. So if you set yourself an hour to do Fiskerton twice, that would be what my recommendation is. And don't worry so much about the answer. Just concentrate on what you get down. So you don't honestly, this might sound super aggressive, but I do suggest that you do the question for an hour, go and have a coffee. Don't mark yourself. Just sit yourself. Did I say that right? You do the question for half an hour, go and get a coffee. When you come back, don't mark yourself. Just do another half an hour doing the question again, so that you're just focusing on your answer and not worrying too much about mine. Can I get down 80? It's actually only 18 points. Can I get 18 points down in 36 minutes? Can I get 18 points down in half an hour? Give me a thumbs if you're okay with that recommendation. Which comes to homework, which I cocked up, didn't I? Did you see that email from me? Oh, no. I was doing a time delay announcement and I sent it straight away. Damn. Now, if you look at the original documents that I popped into resources in the morning this morning, you'll see that the original document, the answers document, has gaps. So let me share my screen with you now and go across to resources. Just give me a second. There we go. And if you come across here, you'll see that the SBR exam answers are with gaps. And what gaps there are the gaps relative to the homework. And the homework is described in the planner, this top line here. So the next document I'm going to open up is the planner. So let's go and open up the planner on my stick. Now here is the study planner just there, and just open it up. Here we go, and get it nice and wide in front of you. And what you're seeing in the first week of the course is exactly what I told you the course would be doing, which is I do a question, you do a question, we debrief it. And then I do a question, you do a question, and we debrief it, and so on through the course. So this is probably the second nicest question to Fiskerton. The nicest of all is question Farham, which I do want to open up in front of you actually and show you question Farham so you can have a little look at it with me. What I want you to do with this homework question is to submit it to me, and you'll see, you'll see my email at the bottom. I was going to the top, it's usually at the top, but there it is at the bottom. You'll see my email there. Can I ask you please to submit to me using email? And when you do so, as usual, please make sure you put in the title, the name of the question, Farham. Just be a bit careful, it's Farham, not Farnham. And then I'll be able to search your answer in Outlook. Now, as I said, I'd very much like you to email me directly. The other way of emailing me is through Canvas, and it does work most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't. And yeah, there was one, I think I might have mentioned this to you. There's one particular student, I forget who it was now, but one very keen student that corresponded with me an enormous amount at the beginning of the course, and then sent me occasional emails, but never responded with thank you, which is a very polite student, never said thank you after the, and we found out during the revision phase, fortunately, we found out what would happen. My emails somehow got stuck in Canvas and they all flooded through. So he was asking a question and getting no answer. He thought I was answering straight away, but he thought he was getting no answer. There was some sort of Canvas thing going on. It was, don't worry, Canvas is not that, it doesn't fall off the rails all the time. It was one student. in a period of 6 months. But still, you don't want to be that one student, do you? Outlook is not perfect, but it very, very rarely derails. So you're much safer if you email me to Outlook. Sorry, this is Outlook. You're much better if you email me directly to Outlook rather than emailing to and through Canvas. That's that point. When emailing homework, make sure you put the name, Farham in the title. And then what I'll do is I'll try and mark you on the Tuesday, and then we'll meet on the Wednesday and I will debrief. Now, as you saw in the announcements that I accidentally sent today, I'm going to send an announcement every Monday, which basically sets you up for the week and gives you the homework answers. So in fact, I managed to get this one right. The answer to Hill is already sitting in a time delayed announcement that you're going to get at the beginning of the week. So just to add in a little bit extra here, what should have happened is I do Fiskerton, you do Farham, then you get the answer to Farham for me, then we meet for debriefing. So there's actually, the idea was there's actually 4 steps in this process. I do Fiskerton, you do Farham, then you get my Farham answer and we debrief Farham together. Now, all I'm asking of you is when you are having your first go of Farham, the one that you're going to send to me, try and be as honest and true to yourself as you possibly can at this stage, and only then have a look at my answer once you've done yours. If you really don't like it and you really want to chuck it in the bin, then obviously that, you've got to do what you feel is right. But I think try your very best to have a go at Farham before you look at my answer, because I think now is the time to start thinking about your answer and not so much about my answer. Because as I keep saying, yes, Graham keeps saying, I mean, there's lots of terrible things about Graham, but the one thing about Graham that's really good is he's enormously positive. He's like, yeah, just slap down any old rubbish, like just get some rubbish down. This way of talking that I talk is very much Graham's way of talking. Yeah, just get it down, stop worrying, just put it down and slap down what you think and then apply it and then move on and stop worrying. So this sort of attitude that Graham has feeds into the way that I communicate with you, and that's what I want you to do, and to concentrate on your answer, not on my answer when you do Farham, and then submit to me. That's that practicality. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second to make sure everything's cool. We don't have a mentoring session after live session 2. Am I on the planner now? Do I have the planner? I think there's one week where, I think I know what you're saying. Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. So Shimaz, you probably haven't figured out the dates. That's all it is. What's going on here? Can you see that what happens it's a bit awkward, the course, because it's actually 5 sessions over 4 weeks. So basically what happens is that I think it's the 3rd week. If you take this as being the first week of revision, I realize that's a little bit cheeky, but if you take this as the first week, this is the 2nd week, this is actually the 3rd week, Shimaz. Can you see it's 17, 18, 19? So, obviously you're going to need a weekend to do question fill and Afrikaans. And when you do question fill and Afrikaans, then we're going to debrief fill and Afrikaans the following week. I think that's what you're talking about, Shimaz. So don't worry, don't think that there's any questions that you're doing that will miss out on debriefing. It's kind of difficult, it's kind of difficult to picture this when you see it just here. But as it happens, I've got a rather colourful, I don't know quite why I'm so nerdy, but I am a nerd, aren't I? Let's be honest. So let's have a little look and see if it's on my recent stuff. Might be. My timetable is what I'm looking for. Can't see it. It's on a stick. So if you come across here, you'll get some rather cute colours. It's a little bit embarrassing. It's like, what a 3-year-old would do with Excel. But there you go. Aren't those lovely colours? That's what I did this afternoon. So green is F9, financial management. And can you see now, Shimaz, you've got this session is your first session. Then you've got that. Then you've got these 2 as a pair. Then you've got that. So what's happening is you do that, then you get debrief. Then you do that, then you get debrief. You do this pair, you get debrief, and you do that, you get debrief. Do you get that? So it's within the realms of the fact that we have 4 weeks and 5 sessions, I think it does make sense. You do that, you have a debrief, you do that, you have a debrief, you do this per, you have a debrief, you do that, you have a debrief. So within the realms of the fact that we are talking about 5 sessions in 4 weeks, I think the timetable. So that's that. I think you're happy with that, aren't you? Yeah, good, great. And I'm definitely getting to the end now, aren't I? Is there anything you can think of before we sign off? In which case, I just want to check resources and make sure there isn't something sitting there that I haven't introduced to you, because there usually is. I want to bring you with me. So we talked about the planner, we talked about Graham's approach to the exam. We've got gaps in the answers, and those gaps will be filled each Monday. The article pack, of course, the article pack is that, Shamaz, you know that double header, that session, that's when we do the article pack on the Tuesday and the Thursday. So in some ways it's a little unfortunate that, you know, we don't have 5 weeks available for revision, but in other ways it's kind of handy because we can continue with the pack from the Tuesday to the Thursday, on the Thursday from the Tuesday. This article pack is the one that really helps us with the tricky subject current issues. So that there, you can just park that and leave that until that double session week. So I think that was around about the, was it the 17th and the 19th, was it? So those 2 sessions there are dealing with the article pack. I've got it there ready for me, but we don't need that at the moment. The IFRS notes is the cheat sheet. We've done everything. I really think we've done everything, guys. So what's going to happen is I'm going to turn off my computer shortly and this answer will disappear into the ether. That's okay, because you already have my answer already in this baby over here. Where are we now? In this baby over here, the exam answers with gaps. It does have gaps, but Fiskerton is not one of those gaps. There are only 5 gaps each for your homework. So that's it. It's 6 gaps actually, because I give you an extra question at the end of the course. So there are only 6 gaps. The rest of the answers are in full, which does mean, by the way, that once you've done question Farham, you can go off and do all the other question 2s. Does mean that. So don't do Farham and then go off and do other questions. Do Fiskerton, then do Fiskerton, then do Farham. And then once you've done that, you can go off and do all the other question 2s. Ah, yes, of course. The one thing I've forgotten is down here. This thing here is known as the revision pack. This revision pack is the PDF version of the exam questions. And there's absolutely no problem with you opening PDFs and looking at PDFs because they are easier to deal with. But don't just do that. Make sure that when you are interacting with the with your questions, that you do at least half the time, some of the time, play around in test reach. So you'll find the question Fiskerton in there, of course. Maybe I'll open up that document and just show it to you, because I've just remembered it's in a bit of a funny order. Not a wrong order, but a bit of a funny order. Here it is. Now, can you see the title? It's a bit of a long-winded title, but this is the title that the publishers use, Nivi uses this title. This is the RP/PEP. So the RP is the old adapted P2 questions that have been SBR'd. They're great questions, but they are P2 questions that have been adapted. They have been adapted to SBR. So now they're SBR questions, but when they were originally written, they were P2 questions. So they're great questions written by Graham Holt, but they're not SBR questions. Now you can see from where I'm saying that they are good, but they're not as good as the real SBR questions. The real SBR questions are the PEP questions. Now let me open it and you'll see that the way that Nivi has compiled this is that the value questions are at the back. It's not wrong, it's not counterintuitive, it is intuitive, but it is a bit strange for you guys. So the revision pack starts with wonderful question Beth that has been turned into an SBR question, and then it works its way through all these fantastic Graham Holt questions. They're all great, they're all Graham Holt questions, they've all got his craziness, they're all valid, but you don't do them until you've done these babies. The past exam pack, otherwise known as the PEP, is the specimen papers onwards. So if you're looking for a PDF of the 7 SBR exams, here it is with them all here. But watch for it again. It's called the PEP, and it's about, can you see my button there? It's about halfway through the pack. Please don't think that the first 36 questions are some kind of substandard question. It's not like that. They are very good. It's just that these questions are better. I can just imagine some students will blast their way through all of these questions and be looking for more questions to do, in which case they will be dipping into the revision pack, but you don't start there. You start here. You know, have a go at question Cutchin. You can if you want to, but you might prefer to have a go at question Abbey, because Abbey, of course, is a question too. So what you might choose to do is you might choose to do question Fiskerton, then do Fiskerton, then do Farm, and then do Abbey. That would make, you know, that would be a really good Sunday. Yeah, I'm glad to be able to introduce that document to you, because some students do find it difficult to navigate. Of course you would, wouldn't you? Because, you know, like I say, it is a bit odd that the value questions are in the back. The PEP is in the back. So for us, this is the PEP. Again, I'm looking for the thumbs. Give me thumbs if that's all good. Excellent, guys. You've been enormously patient as ever. I hope you found that useful. You've got a busy weekend ahead. I'm working tomorrow, so I'll be, I'm working tomorrow at ULaw. I'm doing my last final face-to-face campus teaching actually tomorrow at ULaw. And then there'll be no further campus teaching because of lockdown. The government of Leicester is in a strange position as regards colleges. We are permitted to be open, but we're supposed to have some sort of extreme social distancing. It's like, what does that mean? Well, the decision was taken this morning, actually, that what it means is that we can't actually teach in campus. So we're going to finish the course that we have, courses that we have this weekend, and then our revision will be continuing here online. And that's why joining us, we have Arifa and Awajiha and Tiana, who's left already, actually. And Kieran, I can see, is still there hiding behind his name. So we do have some of the campus guys here with us already. Thanks very much, guys. So have a super Saturday and a super Sunday. I'll be on my emails on Sunday, but until then, I'll see you when I see you. So take care, guys, and I'll see you soon. Now, this is Tiana. Hello, Tiana. Take care, guys.